The militant transgender movement, is that a domestic terrorist threat?
If you are encouraging people to commit acts of violence against the United States government or against your fellow Americans, absolutely, you're involved in a terrorist movement. I don't know enough about that particular organization.
That right there, of course, is Jesse Waters talking with JD Vance about the militant transgender movement, which to, I guess, his credit, I guess JD Vance says he's not familiar with that organization, probably because it's not an organization and it's not a movement. It's just a thing that's been conjured up in the minds of Fox News hosts and hacks in the Trump administration, but it's what you should be focusing on right now. Don't think or talk or legislate around guns or mental health or anything like that. It's all trans 24/7. And although he didn't 100% take the bait there, JD Vance did once again spread the knowing lie that political violence is somehow uniquely a problem of the far left, as you'll see in this.
I don't know enough about that particular organization, but what you increasingly see, Jesse, is you see people in the trans community and other members of the far left who are saying they are so threatened by negative rhetoric that they must take arms and attack people. If your movement is telling you to commit acts of violence against people for speaking words that you don't like, number one, you're evil, and number two, you are engaged in a terrorist movement, and that's part of what we have to root out in the White House. And this is very important, Jesse. I've talked to a lot of people about this. I've talked to Stephen Miller probably 7 times in the past 2 days. We are working very hard to ensure that the funding networks for left-wing violence, that the radicalization networks for left-wing violence, that if you encourage or fund your fellow Americans or anybody else to commit acts of violence because you disagree with political speech, you are going to be treated like a terrorist organization, and we're going to go after you.
Now, in the strictest sense, that's not something that anybody who might be watching this show should be worried about, because of course those funding organizations and networks don't actually exist, because that's not a thing. Again, they're just making that up. But then also don't feel too comfortable, because they're not going after terrorist funding networks, they're going after the left. And they're going to state that anyone who says something that they don't like is committing acts of violence. We've been seeing that all this last week. And again, like, we cannot stress enough how much JD Vance is lying straight out of his ass about the history of political violence, as well as advocacy for political violence in our country. We could run through all of the different incidents. We could talk about Dylan Roof, for instance, and it would be a great opportunity for Kash Patel to actually find out who that is. We could talk about all the different attackers, about Melissa Hortman, about the Tree of Life, about El Paso. We could run through all of those, but they don't care. They're not gonna convince their mind. They're going for something here. And when it comes to the actual advocacy for violence, I mean, I don't know if like you're new to following politics or something, but the threat to start a civil war has been a constant on the right and right-wing media for literally years. Anytime you even hint at the possibility of some sort of gun regulation, they talk about the need to potentially take up arms. You've got these action groups that, like the neo-Nazi fight clubs, which are, like, even as we speak now, marching across America and saying that the white man needs to rise up. You obviously had the advocacy for violence against immigrants. You had people like Laura Loomer who were cheering the possibility that migrants could be eaten by alligators. Like, again, when it comes to either the actual violence, the actual incidents of terrorism, or the advocacy for it, it is not difficult to find a textbook worth of examples of the right wing doing it, but all of that needs to be ignored. It is politically inconvenient to acknowledge, because Jesse Waters and JD Vance are trying to advance their ideological goals here. Now, obviously I have a lot to say about this. I'll give more thoughts, but let's jump now to Elliot. What do you make of what we showed you?
I mean, I've heard of transphobia. This is like the most literal form of transphobia, being like, we're actually scared that they're going to do like terrorist acts based on absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Also, I am kind of enjoying them twisting themselves into pretzels to kind of come up with an excuse for this. I do admire JD Vance's ability to do this like political answer thing, where like if you pay attention to what he's saying, both of those things don't actually match up at all. He just sort of talks about a general thing and then goes, absolutely, yeah, it's definitely the trans people. But what struck out to me the most is he mentioned he talked to Stephen Miller 7 times in the past 2 days. And I don't think that can be good for anybody's brain. And I feel bad for him, and someone needs to check on him. Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I say all the time that it feels like I often feel like I'm being gaslit by reality, all the time. And this is another good example of that. The whole conversation around the left being more violent and everything the whole time is just like, okay, but there's so many cases to prove that isn't true. But also, even aside from that, even what they otherwise think about the left, do you know what I mean? It's like they both think that, like, the stereotype of the left is like some, like cowardly, feckless barista type who wants to take everybody's guns away and wouldn't hurt a literal fly because they lack the, the conviction necessary to live in a man's world and all that type of stuff. But also, they're like gay Jason Bourne at the same time. You know what I mean? Just like Antifa, black ops operatives that are like secretly picking everybody off left and right and all this stuff. And it's like none of it makes any sense. But also, as far as like trans people, so talk about being like gaslit by reality. Like, the truth is they're way more likely to be victims of violence just because of, what they are. And so then to be told that's already been the case. So now for like the government and the president and vice president to tell everybody that agrees with them that, actually they're terrorists who are a threat to all that we hold dear. You got to imagine that's only going to get worse for them. And they have to, just like everything continues to get worse for them as long as these people are in charge for literally no reason. They just want to exist. And even that is just too offensive for them to allow. So I don't know. It's out of control.
Yeah, we actually have a scoop that we'll turn to in just a sec about another way that it's going to get worse for them soon. But yeah, I love that point that we are simultaneously too effete and weak to run a nation, but we're also DEI Jack Reacher. I don't know. It's very strange the way that they think. And also in terms of the actual violence, like, we live in a country that is so sick that even at this point in the year, we've had over 300 mass shootings in America. And depending on which study you look at, trans people make up something around 1% of the population. They're not even keeping pace with cis people. Like, the idea that forget everything about white nationalist violence, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, whatever. They're not even they're barely interested in like Islamic terrorism anymore. They just moved on to everything is trans people. And let's say that this guy ends up to have actually been motivated by something having to do with trans people, which has not been established. That would be what, 3 ever? We've had thousands of mass shootings in America. They are starkly, disproportionately underrepresented among mass shooters. And it's weird that people don't point that out.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, if you look at the data too, you can tell that they're just trying so hard to gin this up and force this narrative where, I don't know if you've ever met like a non-binary or trans person. These are not violent people, but even if you extend this little fantasy of theirs and you're like, okay, so what does this mean? If anybody ever talked to someone who then went out and did a violent crime, does that mean they now are like on trial or something? It doesn't make any sense.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.